On today's episode of Locked On Wild, turns out Joel Eriksson Ek's pretty important to the Wild offense.
Hey, this is Matt Boldy, and you're listening to Locked On Wild.
You're Locked On Wild, your daily podcast on the Minnesota Wild. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's happening, everybody? Welcome in to another episode of Locked On Wild, your daily Minnesota Wild podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team each and every day. And we thank you for making Locked On Wild your first listen each and every day as well. Make sure you subscribe on YouTube and your favorite podcast platform so you don't miss out on any new episodes throughout the week. Today's episode of Locked On Wild is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $250 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. On today's episode of Locked On Wild, we take a look at the imminent return of Filip Gustavsson. Thank the Lord for that. We'll also talk about the scoring drought and dive into some of the numbers that explain a recent stretch of non-Kaprizov futility for the Minnesota Wild. And we'll also take a look at what's on tap this week, a much-needed break, to be honest, for the Minnesota Wild after tonight's game against Chicago. My name is Seth Toupal, host of Locked On Wilds, at the helm since 2021. Joined, and we're going to consider this, again, because of the Minnesota Vikings, we're going to consider this a victory Micheletti Monday. Because they just continue to find ways to get it done. Unfortunately for the Minnesota Wild, Alex, we've officially hit the skids. 4 out of the last 5 and 5 out of the last 7. And it's not like they're one goal losses. This started back against LA, a 4-1 loss to the Kings. Although I will contend in that game, it was 2-0, I think, until the last about 4 or 5 minutes of the third period. Couple of empty net goals. Yakov Trenin scored again. So I will contend that game was closer than the final score would indicate. And you beat Utah in a shootout. You then get wiped by the Oilers, 7-1. You beat Philly 4-1, and then 3-2 to Vegas, 6-1 to Florida, 2-1 to Utah, 5-0 to Winnipeg on Saturday, the most recent. And the some of the panic buttons have started to be pushed throughout the state. I'm never going to fault anybody. I'm never going to try to tell anybody how to be a fan. Me personally, I'm concerned, but I'm not I don't think we've reached crisis level. I think you're just seeing the results. Let's talk about the goaltending for one. So Filip Gustavsson missed the last couple of games. In fact, it's been either Fleury or Jesper for the last 5. Filip Gustavsson, so whatever happened, I think happened in that Edmonton game. He just didn't seem crisp and sharp in that game. You go from Filip Gustavsson, who has been saving roughly 1 goal above expected every game this year, to Marc-Andre Fleury, who has been slightly below. So he's given up 0.4, 0.5 goals per time he's in. But those usually haven't been goals that have hurt the Minnesota Wilds. And Jesper, it's kind of the same story. So you go from saving 1 goal above expected to giving up 1 goal above expected. Guess what? That's a 2-goal swing. So Filip Gustavsson is essentially worth 2 goals per game for the Minnesota Wild this year. And I guess we shouldn't be surprised that the goaltending just kind of took a little bit of a nosedive here over the last few games.
Yeah, and played some really good teams too, right? Especially Vegas. I was talking to you offline that that team looks ready to make a cup run if Mark Stone can stay healthy. But just you had Jesper in there a couple times, just a goalie that's not ready to be in the thick of a battle of a playoff, to get into the playoffs for the Wild here, because every point's going to matter here. And we also talked off air about Colorado. They're making a push. They've kicked Dallas to the curb, and I was looking at the standings right now, Dallas wouldn't even be in the playoffs right now, which isn't that crazy to think? So, it's the Central's getting crazy. We thought there's no way Winnipeg is gonna hold on to this, and they continue to just to stay in that first spot. And Hellebuyck, he's looking like he's gonna win the Vezina this season. So it's interesting. It's a combo of injuries, goaltending coming at the worst time for the Wild here.
And I didn't think Jesper was terrible by any stretch in his starts over the last handful of games. But when you are in a skid from a scoring perspective, and the Minnesota Wilds, other than the Calgary Flames, the Minnesota Wild would have the lowest goals scored amongst playoff teams right now. So it's clear that the offense is in a major funk, and we'll talk about that here coming up. But this is why I think it's such a big deal that Filip Gustavsson was out. And I talked about this when the injury first kind of popped up, in saying that this is going to be one that you feel. Because when you are struggling offensively and your goalie can keep one extra goal off the board, that's massive. Like that is the difference between wins and losses. And not only that, but I think Filip Gustavsson has shown a huge tendency to keep the team in the game until they can get something going. Like, he just has time and time again this year shown the ability to keep goals off the board until the Minnesota Wild can kind of start to gain some strides and build some momentum on offense. And Marc-Andre Fleury and Jesper Wallstedt just have not done that over this last 5-game stretch.
Goaltending can mask your issues. They just and Gus is just like Hellebuyck. Gus is playing at a Vezina type level, and you need him to be fully healthy. I think maybe Gus was maybe trying to hide an injury a little bit there for and just tried to play through it. But it's better just to shut it down for a little bit and get back to 100%, because you don't want it to linger. We saw Gus got hurt last year too, and just wasn't really the same. And so hopefully he can get back to 100%, and don't rush him for the next game. If he can back up, that's great. That is just a relief just to have him on the bench, and it's because this team, if they can't get the goaltending and they can't score, that it's just that's a disaster plan. That's out of the playoff race very fast.
Yeah. You need to have that crisp goaltending. And even still, Filip Gustavsson's 5th in the NHL right now with 10.7 goals saved above expected. 5th. And he's done that in 22 games. So, yeah, he's not at 1 goal per, obviously, but even still, a half a goal per game, 0.49 goals saved above expected per 60 minutes. You're talking, the 10.7 says it itself. He's saved 10, he has been 10 goals better than a normal goalie would be. And that's a large number. So that's the big, I think that's the big sigh of relief, is Jesper was sent down, which means that Gus is either good enough to back up or is going to start against Chicago. My personal preference would be to just let him suit up and go through warm-ups You've got a break coming. We'll talk about that too. Let him suit up. Let him go through warm-ups. But I would say wait until probably at least Friday to start him again. Because you don't want to rush people back.
Yeah, it would be disaster. And Fleury's played pretty well against Chicago in his Wild career, and Chicago is playing a little bit better than they have been. They've been scoring a little bit better, but that's a team that the Wild, in theory, they have more talent. They should beat Chicago, but who knows? Please stay out of the box. I know Chicago's power play isn't great, but they still have Connor Bedard out there, and so you give him any extra space, it's not good.
On the advice of legal counsel, I am contractually obligated to not talk about the special teams, which is why I did not put it on the rundown today.
Yes.
We'll mention it, I'm sure, in the next segment because I want to go through the numbers. I talked about this a little bit in Saturday's postcast after the Winnipeg game. I think not only seeing players go into major scoring droughts, I think I've got a number that kind of explains why. And it has to do with Joel Eriksson Ek being out of the lineup. So I'm gonna dive into the numbers to try to figure out why it is apparently easier to scale Mount Everest than it is for the Minnesota Wild to score goals without Kirill Kaprizov on the ice. What is it now? 14 straight goals?
It's crazy. Yeah, yes. And I mean, we have some forwards that are drier than the Sahara Desert out there. It's Ryan Hartman, where are you? It's crazy. Foligno. I mean, you can the list goes on and on.
I will we'll get to the numbers. I read these on Saturday night and had some people saying, you need to put up a warning before you read these off, because I had people running for the bathroom for getting potentially getting sick.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy. I don't know what's going on.
So I'll read them again because we can never get enough. We can never get enough of the pain and the misery. But I'm going to try to give you something to explain. So we'll look at the numbers, both from a points production and shot location, as we continue today's episode of Locked on Wild after this. Today's episode of Locked on Wild is brought to you by Prize Picks. If you love sports, you're going to love Prize Picks, the best place to turn your sports knowledge into real money. Whether it's hockey, football, or any of your favorite sports, Prize Picks makes it easy to get in on the action. Plus, you can now win up to 1,000 times your money on Prize Picks. Plus, this holiday season, Prize Picks is giving away $30+ million in rewards during Picksmas and offering 2 free picks in December. And when your picks hit, Prize Picks makes it easy to cash out. You can get your money in as fast as 15 minutes. This week on Prize Picks, we're keeping it in Minnesota, as I am looking for Matt Boldy to get more than 4 shots on goal this week and Kirill Kaprizov to net more than 1 assist. It is so simple to make your picks, and you can have fun with friends while potentially cashing out big. So download the app today and use code LOCKEDONNHL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's right, $50 instantly at Prize Picks. Run your game. Welcome back to today's episode of Locked on Wild. Once again, we thank you for making Locked on Wild your first listen each and every day. Hope everybody has a great Christmas. Hope you get the opportunity to enjoy with family over the next couple of days. Here's the schedule for the early part of the week, because I am heading up to my parents today, and I will be there until I come back on Thursday. So what we're going to do is we've got obviously today's episode. We'll have an episode for you tomorrow. Going to dive into a trade scenario that I'm really trying to manifest. It is a very, very, very big long shot, but I'm going to try to make it happen anyway. And we'll have an episode for you on Christmas Day as well. But once this episode is posted and the others are posted, I'm shutting the laptop for a couple of days. So that means that Monday's game against Chicago, tonight's game against Chicago, we're going to hope for a win. I'll recap it when I get back, but we're not going to have a postcast for that one. Friday, though, against Dallas, we will muster up. We'll get the bands together for that game. And then we'll get back into it as we roll forward into the month of January. So episodes for you Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Then Thursday and Friday, it'll be just, normal schedule. I'll probably post those closer to lunch. But we'll have episodes for you today, tomorrow, Wednesday. First thing, ready to rock because they're getting pre-recorded. But anyway, Alex, let's talk about this. The number was 14 straight goals that have been scored by the Minnesota Wild with Kirill Kaprizov on the ice, which if you flip that means that the Wild have not scored a goal in their last 14 goals without Kirill Kaprizov on the ice. And some of these numbers, I just went from the start of December, which is 10 games. Kirill has 7 goals, 11 total points in that span. Marco Rossi's got 5 goals and 8 points. Matt Boldy's got 2 goals and 6 points. Matt Zuccarello has 4 points in 5 games since returning. But here are some of the others. Marcus Foligno, as you mentioned, he's got 3 points, is a -2 in those 10 games. Freddie Gaudreau has 2 goals in 10 games. Yakov Trenin has 2 goals in 5 games. Marat Huznadinov has 1 point in the last 10. That was a goal. Travis Boyd played 1 game. Brendan Gaunce, no points in 3. Devon Shore, no points in 9. Ryan Hartman, no points in 10. Ben Jones, no points in 9. Jakub Lauko, no points in 3. Reese Johnson, no points in 3. Now, the time that these players have played in those games varies, obviously, but that is 1, 2, 3, 4. Joel Eriksson Ek has 1 game that he played, and he had no points. 4, 5, 6, 7 players, which basically means that for the entire calendar month, your third and fourth lines have done nothing. And it's
insane, isn't it? It's crazy to not even to fall into some type of an assist. It's Jones. I mean, some of these guys, some of the guys that are playing now are worse than the guys that were filling in last year that were AHL players. It's like I would take Lucchini over Jones and Reese Johnson and this Gauntz character. He's come in and he's looked awful. I don't know. Yeah, some of the new AHL guys for this year. I mean, Devon Shore does nothing for me either. We've seen that movie with multiple teams before. It just I don't see it.
Yeah, and it's 22 shots for Hartman in the last 10, but he's on a 14 or a 15 game span in which he has no points.
It can't happen. He got that extension and then it's disappeared. I don't know what is going on with him.
Yeah, and if you're going to, and look, I'm going to just keep saying this pretty much every show going forward. If the Minnesota Wilds viewed Liam Ogren as ready to take a spot full time, he would be here. It's just like Jesper, right? He's not ready. They're clearly watching him play in Iowa. He may be scoring, but there's more to than just scoring too. Yeah, I think
you have to play some defense.
I think they're putting him on the same plan as Marco Rossi. Is we've got set things that we want you to work on, And we're going to let you do your thing without having to worry about, am I going to get called up or sent down? We're going to watch you for a bunch of games, and we're going to see where you're at. And so what you have is what you have at this point. And this is why I continue to kind of shift a little bit of the blame off of John Hines, because at some point you can scheme up all you want. What are you supposed to do with the lineup when the only line that's capable of giving you a goal is the line that Kirill Kaprizov's on? What are you supposed to do with that?
Yeah, it's a mess. And, I know Kirill and Matt's, they're buddy. But at some point you have to think about getting them off the same line, because the second line, again, we talk about it. Seth, don't we talk about it the second line just is not working right now. It's you're never going to get 100% effort from Marcus Johansson. It's just, that's what it is. He comes and goes, and it's clearly affecting Boldy, and it just, Boldy needs some help on that second line.
Yes, he does. This is where Joel Eriksson Ek comes in.
Right.
Listen to the numbers for the last, I think I pulled the last 7 games. Listen to where the bulk of the shots are coming from. So the game against Winnipeg, the Wild had 31 low danger shot attempts, 4 medium danger, and 0 high danger. So 31 of your 35 shot attempts are coming from the extreme perimeter. And if you think that you're going to be able to somehow luck your way into goals against Connor Hellebuyck in that scenario, you're sorely mistaken.
Good luck.
Yeah, you're sorely mistaken in those circumstances. In the game against Utah, Kirill Vejmelka saw 42 unblocked shot attempts. 28 of them were low danger, 12 were medium danger, and 2 were high danger. So that was better, but still not enough. Florida, Sergei Bobrovsky saw 39 unblocked shot attempts. 32 of them were low danger. 4 were medium, and 3 were high. So 32 out of 39 were beyond the faceoff circles. Again, if you think that you're going to be able to take advantage of perimeter shots without your best net front guy, it's not going to work. Vegas, Ilya Samsonov, 33 unblocked shot attempts, 25 of them low danger, 6 medium, 2 high.
And that's a goalie you can get to. Samsonov's not been great this year.
He was not tracking the puck at all.
No.
But if you
batted one in, Kirill looked like he was lining one to center field against for the Twins. I mean, Samsonov, that's a goalie that you can get to. It's that was frustrating.
The one game of the last 7 where Samuel Urson for the Flyers, he saw what was it here? 29 unblocked shot attempts, 25 low danger, 3 medium, and 1 high. Now he gave up a ton of goals because
he's not a great goalie.
He's not great, but still that percentage is not great. Calvin Pickard for the Oilers, the game you got rocked 7-1, 33 low danger shot attempts out of 41, 5 medium, 3 high.
Another goalie you can get to. That's not good enough effort.
The one that is interesting to me was the 5-4 shootout win, because Kirill Vejmelka, the Minnesota Wild managed a 4.3 expected goals, which it's got to be the high water mark that I've seen this year for them. I, granted, have only looked through a handful of games, But 4.3 expected goals against, that means your offense is going to work. That means your offense is generating a ton. Vejmelka saw 63 unblocked shot attempts. 48 of them came from low danger, which is still not great, but 9 medium and 6 high danger. So if you can get a combination of like 15 medium and high danger shots, that's good. That's much better.
Yeah, they looked that was the game where they looked like the Wild that has been, that we've seen earlier in the season. But Utah also plays that game where it's free flowing. You get a lot of chances when you play Utah, in theory.
And that's why I think it's more important to continue to crash the net, especially against these teams like Dallas, like Winnipeg, that are going to play much tougher defense. If you are,
doesn't that scream Marcus Foligno, Ryan Hartman type of hockey too?
Yes,
that's how they score, and they're not doing that. What they're good at.
Yeah, you're feeding into what the opponent wants, which is shots from way outside, which gives your goalie more time to react, and
not a ton of rebounds.
Not a ton of rebounds. And I think that's a large part of the reason that the Wild offense has dried up, is you're just not going to score at the same rate from that far outside in the zone. You gotta get it to the net, and you gotta just start chucking fists at people, metaphorically, not literally, because that'll be penalties, and we don't want the penalty kill to have any time the rest of the season.
What's kind of funny is, like, we're talking about the penalty kill, and then it's like John Merrill, the guy that's been a thorn to the penalty kill, and then is taking the penalties, and they're still giving up goals. Yeah, it's can't make it.
It's personnel. It's not reacting quick enough. It's scheme. It's all of it.
Right.
And
face off, penalty kill, 5-on-5. It's really hurting them.
I'm getting to the point where I don't think, like, I'm starting to shift some of this more to, and again, it's a 4-game losing streak. It's 5 out of 7. The Minnesota Vikings lost 2 games in a row, and people said the sky was falling. Right. And that was like 8 games ago. And they have not lost since. Like, 7 games out of an 82-game season is a lower percentage than 2 weeks in the NFL is. Yeah, so
they're going to have these in the NHL season. It's just the Wild. It always happens to them,
especially when you're playing. This was brought up in the postcast too, and I was so glad. I was glad that I was enlightened by it. Condensed schedule with the amount of games that are being played. This Wild team look exhausted.
Yeah.
So
I mean, he's playing way too many minutes, but they have to, because they don't trust a lot of these AHL guys that are up. I mean, it's hideous at times.
But it looks like a team that needs a break. And so we'll talk about what's on tap for this week. Take a little look at the Central, some of the teams starting to figure it out. Nashville's still sleeping. That alarm is going off like crazy, and they're just sleeping right through it. So we'll talk about that, as well as what the week has in store, as we finish up today's episode of Locked on Wild after this. Today's episode of Locked on Wild is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL playoffs are just about here, but it's not too late to get in on the regular season action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can finish the season strong with $250 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. FanDuel has so many ways for you to pick up the W. I love betting on which players will score a touchdown and how many points each team will score. For instance, yesterday, how about Justin Jefferson, that go-ahead touchdown against the Seattle Seahawks? I don't know what the Seahawks defensive backs were doing on that receiving touchdown. It looked like one was trying to take the other one out. Justin Jefferson is a cinch to score these days, so that would have been a great route to go. You also could have taken Sam Darnold, Slinging Sammy D, 3 more touchdowns. He's got 15 in the last 6 games. Just outrageous. Those are pretty good options for $5 wins on FanDuel. So just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your chance at $250 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Welcome back to the final segment of today's episode of Locked On Wild. And once again, we thank you for making Locked On Wild your first listen each and every day. Again, a reminder, we'll have episodes for you all week, but tomorrow's show and Wednesday's show are going to be some pre-recorded episodes. We'll be back to the normal fun on Thursday. So hope everybody gets a chance to enjoy Christmas, great food. Christmas is the ultimate baking holiday. So hopefully you get a chance to have some cookies. I need to have an intervention to stop going to Crumble. We're at crisis levels. It's too good. The cookies are too good. And I have one now a mile from my house. And and especially after some of these Wild games, you tend to stress eat a little bit. And going to Crumble to take care of that it's good for me, but it's also not. So hope you get to enjoy some outstanding baked goods over these next couple of days. Alex, this Minnesota Wild team looks like one that needs a break, but it also looks like they need a slump buster game. They need a team to just cave their faces in and beat them 7 or 8-1, or the Minnesota Wild equivalent of that, 4-0. You just need to let out some of the frustration and have some things go back in the positive column. And there's no better team to do that against than Chicago.
Oh, 100%. I did say they're playing a little bit better, but that is the team that the Wild have been picking on in recent years post Patrick Kane and Jonathan Taves. And that's what we call a get right game in theory. So this is one where Kirill could add to the point totals and help him in the heart race. Who he's up against Leon Draisaitl, who's just in demon mode. Guy it's between him and Kirill, and Kirill's having it's like he's facing Mike Tyson in a title boxing match. Draisaitl's just on fire.
Yeah, it is just fun. It's fun to have somebody in the conversation, but I mean, those guys are. Kirill's in the conversation. These guys are all insanely good. It's nice to have somebody that is on a similar level to those guys. But it is it's going to be interesting to see what the lineup looks like because, as was also mentioned, the few guys that were playing fourth line roles in the spots of the fourth line guys have all been sent down. So that would lead you to believe that somebody is close to returning. Maybe, hopefully. Maybe Trennan. I don't know. I was looking for the tweet. I was trying to stall so that I could look for the tweet. Michael Russo yesterday. Travis Boyd reassigned by the Wild. Gives the Wild 12 healthy forwards versus Chicago. We'll see in the morning if there's a chance Trennan or Eriksson Ek can come off IR, and status of Gustavsson, start or backup. With no games till Friday, perhaps Hines goes 11-7 to load up Kaprizov.
Because 11-7's always worked.
I don't hate it.
Right.
I don't hate it as much as it seemed like Dean went to it way too often. But then Dean would just not. He would not do any line changing at all.
No adjustments. Yeah, that's
at least with Hines. And this is something too. I'll give Hines credit for knowing kind of the formula for Kirill and admitting that sometimes it takes him a bunch of minutes early in the game to kind of get into a flow. I would rather those minutes go to the best player on the team and you can kind of sneak him into some potential matchups that favor him. So I don't mind the 11-7 as much as I did. The only time I do mind is when you take too many men on the ice penalties, and then the penalty kill just hands the other team a goal like a freshly baked crumble cookie.
Right off a face-off. It's incredible. That we were talking about before the episode, the Pionk goal. I mean, that was, what are we doing? That was just non-existent effort at all. Yeah,
if you let two guys walk up to either side of the net and you have another one between the face-off circles, you're asking for a bad time.
Yeah.
And guess what? We're having one. So I guess my hope here is that regardless of if it's a close game or a rout, just get back in the win column, and more importantly, please nobody else get taken out of the lineup.
Yeah, they cannot afford anybody else to get hurt.
But this is also where all of those points accumulated at the beginning of the season come in massively. You can, what are the Wild here in the month of December? They got to be slightly under 500, I think. I'm pulling it up as we speak. It's just ESPN is just not cooperating. In the month of December, the Minnesota Wild are 3-1, 3-2, 4-2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 4-6. But
that's where you look at Colorado. It's like they're starting to really ramp up on against teams. And man, I thought Seattle was going to be better this year, and they just they're hideous. They're
real bad.
Yeah, they're in a bad spot.
Yeah, we expected that the Avalanche would be one of the best three teams in the division. Obviously, Alexander Georgiev had a thing or two to say about that before the season.
They finally they saw what everybody was saying on the internet, and they're like, "You cannot win with this guy," and they finally got rid of him. And then for whatever reason, San Jose's like, "Yeah, we'll take him." Yeah,
it's funny too, because in the goalie department, the Avs are going through the same thing that the Minnesota Wild are going through right now with their special teams. The Avalanche didn't need like above average goaltending. They just needed league average. Right. Could you imagine where the Minnesota Wild would be at right now if they had league average penalty kill?
Oh my goodness. Yeah, they would. They would not be on these streaks that they're having. How many percentage points higher would that be? They'd be right there with Winnipeg, maybe like above Winnipeg at this point.
So let's talk about penalty kill percentage right now. New York Rangers have the best at 88%. 15th is the Philadelphia Flyers at 80.2%. They're tied with the Tampa Bay Lightning. That would also be slightly above the Winnipeg Jets, who are at 79.8%. The Minnesota Wild right now are at 71.8%. So 9%. How many times have they surrendered? I don't think there's any way to figure that out. But that would be interesting. And then from a power play perspective, the Minnesota Wild are currently at 22nd. 15th is 21.7 to the Edmonton Oilers. So if you get 4 percentage points higher on the power play, you're talking that might vault you ahead of Winnipeg in the standings. If you can just get league average, but we can't get league average.
No.
The only reason that the Wild do not have the worst penalty kill in the league is because the New York Islanders are trying to set a record this year. They're at 64.3%. That would be the worst. The New York Islanders are currently the worst ever. Detroit Red Wings are number 2, which, by the way, what a mess they've become. Fired their coach. They're at 68.1% on the penalty kill. The current record holder is from the 80s. That's how long this penalty kill futility stems. So the only reason that the Minnesota Wilds are not setting a record is because New York Islanders, if they're going to have one banner to hang this year, it's bad PK.
I was joking last night, so that Jack Capiano, that he used to coach the Islanders, and does he want one of his former teams to have that honor? Or does he want to do it with the Wild? Jack's having a tough time right now here with the Wild.
Ottawa Senators, by the way, his former team, 77.2% on the penalty kill. They're in 23rd in the league. So 6% feels like an Everest climb right now. But if you can go on a stretch of like 91 out of 92, some crazy number like that, maybe you can get yourself back up to 75%. But you got to kill like 100 straight penalties to get to 85. Even league average. We're not asking much. We're not asking for an 85% kill.
One a face-off. Get it out of the zone at least.
League average.
Right.
And these problems aren't just hideous like this. But no, we can't have nice things.
No.
We're going to try to have nice things over the Christmas break. And again, I hope everyone does have a wonderful Christmas and
thanks,
get some time to enjoy. We'll be back live on Thursday with new episodes. I'll react to whatever happens in the Chicago game, but the next couple of episodes, we're going to talk a little Tage Thompson for you on Christmas Eve because I want a new Rolls Royce in the garage. So we'll talk about that because it might be a little more feasible than I thought. So stay tuned for that. And again, just enjoy a few days of relaxation. The Wilds play tonight, but after that, they don't play till Friday. Everybody just take some time to put your feet up and eat a lot of cookies.
What would be really funny, Seth, is if you don't get Tage, how about another Cousins in Minnesota?
Spelled differently, though.
Yes.
Cozen's.
The sports debates would be it's a repeat.
I would not be able to handle it. Dylan Cousins is good. That'd be a good backup plan. It just depends on what Buffalo wants to do to try to snap did they lose again? Are they at 14 losses in a row?
It's hideous. It is not good.
Oh my God, it's 13. 13 losses in a row. Go rescue Tage Thompson. We'll talk about the particulars before Christmas Day. But again, everybody, thanks for tuning in.
Thank you.
Make sure to hit that like button so you don't miss out on any new episodes throughout the week because Locked On Wild has you covered every Monday through Friday as part of the Locked On Podcast Network.